And the panel's title is, as it says on the screen, Building the Case for Dynamic Procurement and Serving Better Food in Our Public Sector. Absolutely, the case is here. There is also the e-action to take part in as part of this. So I will hand over to Stephanie and ask her also to introduce the panelists. And Stephanie, I have my happy horn that I can hoot at you if we run out of time, but my voice will also will come in and tell you if we're running out of time. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Kath, and welcome everybody. When I was asked to chair this panel, which is talking about dynamic procurement and serving better food in the public sector, I put my hand up straight away because I'm somebody that founded a charity with the strapline farm gate to school plate. It wasn't quite as simple as I thought it was going to be, but it was well worth the effort. And I'm pleased to say that 10 years on since our school meals campaign in my children's primary school, the London Borough of Richmond, they're still serving gold Food for Life school meals. So it is possible. You're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to our excellent experts. And I'm really pleased with the panel we have today. First, I'm going to tell you about Greg Parsons. Greg is the co-founder of the Southwest Food Hub. Greg set up the hub, which is a social enterprise focusing on implementing a dynamic food procurement in the UK. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. We've also got Rob Percival. Rob, Soil Association, working with Food for Life team. Rob and I have been allies in this camp for a very, very long time, so I'm delighted to hear about the work at the Soil Association. And we also have Claudia Tarry from Friends of the Earth. We're all going to have a discussion. The plan is that each of the speakers has 2 to 3 minutes. I too have a stopwatch here. I'll keep an eye on the time, and then we're going to open it out to questions. So I'm going to start with Greg, if that's okay. Greg, can you give us your opening remarks? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having me along to today's conference. And it's great to be working with Sustain. And I think Alliance maybe steps up above us all who are trying to really try and make food and farming better. Southwest Food Hub, as you quite rightly said, was incorporated as a community interest company in May of 2020, initially stimulated by a will by Crown Commercial Services, part of the Cabinet Office, to implement a technology platform that would provide the facilitation of opening up more the supply chain to the public sector, which, you know, depends on who numbers you listen to, is somewhere around £2 million spent per year, opening that up to more small and medium enterprises, more smaller businesses. And this dates right back to 2014 to a plan for public procurement when the government said they wanted to buy a third of the food public sector from SMEs. So our goal was to run a pilot in the Southwest, and what we commenced with the support of CCS, engaging with buyers and sellers alike to ready them for the platform that was to be put live initially back in 2020, but obviously due to delays and redirected resources has been delayed and delayed. I mean, that unfortunately the CCS element of that has now come to a grinding halt after a review within the Cabinet Office of where they should place their resources, but delighted to announce that, you know, we're now looking at getting more local authority support to bring to life the platform and how to fund the platform, and we will continue relentlessly to try and bring this solution to light, because we believe there's so much good work going on with the SME producers and such a variation of produce available, and there's such a will within the public sector to change the way they buy, to have more flexibility and versatility and more choice, that it just needs something in the middle to make it work. And that's where we believe that dynamic food procurement provides the solution, because it enables the producers, once they meet the government buying standards for food, to get onto the platform and to make their produce available. At the other end, the buyers, the anchor institutions can make choices at strategic level and then at local level more dynamically, not waiting for a 5-year contract to be renewed, make decisions more dynamically about the choices that they want to put onto their plates, be that geographically driven or be that animal welfare or environmentally driven. They have more choice. So I don't know how I'm doing it with my 2 minutes, Steph, but Stephanie, sorry.
That's bang on. That's really good, Greg. Thanks for kicking us off. So I'm going to hand over to Rob now.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. The Food for Life scheme, for those who don't know, is a sole association scheme that works with caterers in schools and hospitals, nurseries, universities, workplaces, and visitor attractions. So across the public sector, including in 50% of English primary schools, so a broad spread. And at the moment, it's playing a number of roles which demonstrate the potential for procurement policy if it was pitched in the right place. So it's the only means at the moment. Food for Life is the only scheme through which caterers can verify their compliance with school food standards, hospital food standards, and voluntary standards in early year settings. And it's also showing the potential for procurement policy to channel public money into more sustainable produce. So there were around 400 million meals served to Food for Life standards last year, and this channeled more than £50 million of public spend into British produce, more than 12 million into organic, 15 million into high welfare meat. And we know that much of this spend is also returned to the local area. So a social return on investment study found that for every £3, for every pound spent on Food for Life, there's £3 returned in local social economic value. So it's really a model that demonstrates what's possible, what can be achieved, and it was recognised within the National Food Strategy as the sort of the model to emulate nationally, one way or another. It's been a very tough operating environment for caterers over the past few years. But huge amount's been achieved in Food for Life settings, but this has really been despite of government policy instead of because of it. And we really need now with the food strategy to join it all up, put a really ambitious procurement policy in place, and roll these achievements out nationally.
Rob, that was a really good introduction. Thank you very much. And everybody's keeping to time, which makes my job so much easier. I'm now going to pass over to Claudia from Friends of the Earth. Over to you.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. It's great to be here. I'm actually working as a consultant with Friends of the Earth at the moment with Claire Oxborough, who I'm sure many of you here today will know. Prior to this, I've worked on quite a few animal welfare and dietary campaigns, including Meat Free Monday, and rolling out the Humane Society International's Forward Food Plant-Based Culinary Training Programme. So it's great to be now working with Friends of the Earth, trying to engage the catering industry in this less and better meat mantra, which is so vital if we're to meet our climate goals and prevent further nature collapse. We need to engage the catering industry as a whole in serving much less meat. That actually includes fish and dairy products as well, and buying to much better standards as much as possible. So the work that we've been doing at Friends of the Earth over the last 18 months has been developing a new accreditation scheme that's called Kelia Kitchens. It's really designed to pull out this very high impact area, an urgent area with urgent need, to laser focus their attention on serving and procuring less meat, fish and dairy in order to help the nation eat less of it. And as our first priority, we're working with university caterers. There's already a big demand from their customers, mostly students, for sustainable food. So we're helping them to meet that demand. And also because many universities have declared a climate emergency, or have sustainability plans and targets in place, but we found with them, and also the case with local authorities, that they often leave food, and specifically they leave meat reduction out of these plans, and this is something that needs to be urgently addressed. The targets in our new scheme align with the very helpful targets that we now have to promote the Committee on Climate Change's meat and dairy reduction recommendations, which were 25% reduction by 2030 and 35% meat and dairy reduction by 2050. And also, of course, the National Food Strategy's 30% reduction recommendation. So now we've got these fixed targets in place that we can promote and really start trying to urge caterers to work towards them pretty fast. And hand in hand, of course, with serving less meat, as I mentioned, is this better meat element. We're pushing for percentage increases on purchasing higher welfare products, going beyond, if possible, red tractor and looking as much as possible to organic and free range. Obviously, there are budgetary concerns, but we would like to see things moving in that direction. And also sort of hand in hand with this, not something that I've been working on myself directly, but Friends of the Earth, as part of the Eating Better Alliance, has been putting together a guide for local authorities that supports them in serving less meat, less and better meat. That really is the thread that runs through all of this work, and what you'll probably hear me talking about quite a lot, that less and better meat mantra.
Thank you, Claudia. And I've been watching as the speakers have been introducing this session to the questions coming into the Q&A box, and we've already got many. I'm actually going to start off with a question for Rob, if that's okay. This is from Rich Osborne. And he says, Food for Life has achieved an enormous amount of progress in converting schools to healthy food, positive environments. So why do we need to change the way food is procured? Can you explain what you see as the gap that dynamic food procurement could plug? Rob.
Certainly. So I think we know that procurement can deliver across multiple agendas. If you want to support more sustainable food production, then you can channel public money towards those farmers. You can put money in their pockets. If you want to normalize more sustainable diets that are inclusive of less and better meat, for example, then the best way to do that is through public settings, or at least for the government, the most immediate lever at their disposal is the food served in public settings. Instead of preaching about less meat, you can just make it what's available when you walk into a school or hospital, for example. And we know that procurement has the potential as well to create more diverse and flexible, shorter supply chains, relocalizing some of our food supply. At the moment, there are challenges in the way tenders are issued and contracts are structured, particularly for smaller scale SME agroecological producers. And dynamic food procurement provides a platform through which those smaller scale and more sustainable producers can gain access to public sector markets. So it's a key part of the solution, and we hope to see it at the centre of the government's white paper response to the National Food Strategy.
Yeah, here on that one, Rob, in relation to schools, definitely. So I'm going to ask that one to Greg too. He might be able to fill in some gaps there. Greg.
I think the flexibility and choice, is key, and I think that's currently, whilst as I said earlier, there's a significant will to change buying habits, but the ability to do so just simply isn't there. Technology is around us, and I think the question I often ask is why wouldn't we use it? Why would we stick to the same old linear procurement methods that have been in place for so long? And also, I think we've got to take a look at as well is sharing the opportunity beyond the tier one contractors, many of which the beneficiaries of public sector procurement, many of which are businesses that aren't based in the UK, and I think it's time that they perhaps had to look more locally themselves for supply, and also other suppliers got a look in on that as well. And I don't just tier ones, I talk about the main wholesalers and also the caterers, say many of which are the profits disappear overseas. So I think that's, for me, why the necessity is there. There's a lot of pressure coming on to the food sector, to the farming sector in particular, to make changes, to make investments in order to meet the carbon net zero goals. I think I've always said that the opportunity in public sector procurement, the £2 billion spend, should be opened up as a bit of carrot that goes along with the huge stick that is currently sits within the food and drink sector.
Thank you, Greg. There's a question here that's received a lot of votes. It's slightly off piece, but so important. I feel we should bring it to this session. And it's from Sylvia D'Souza, and talking about food banks. So government has washed their hands of their responsibility to ensure that good food on a plate for every single person. How can food banks and public in general fight back to ensure this responsibility is placed in statutory law? I don't know who wants to come in on that one. This is obviously about enshrining good food in law, which is part of the the focus of this session. Does anybody want to talk about that? Claudia, do you want to come in?
Gosh, I'd quite like to pass that on, actually. It's just a little bit outside of...
Yeah, no, I get that. So we can spin it around. We can talk about... government. It is a tricky one, but it had so many votes, I felt I should bring it in because it's obviously talking about food access and food insecurity, and nobody wants a society that is supported by food banks, and we need to see the back of them. But right now they are doing a brilliant job. So Greg, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just give a perspective on it, you know, and this comes from sort of conversations I've had with, you know, colleagues in the food sector, is that, you know, and I've been directly involved in food banks and in provision for food banks. I think they've played a key and pivotal role. I think the ambition should be that we have a society where they're not needed, and we work towards that rather than whipping them away on a whim. And I think, you know, I've spoken to people that have been, you know, very instrumental in setting up some of the strongest food bank networks, particularly in and around London. Yeah, and their goal is that they should close, but they should close on the basis that the resources that are available for those in most need are getting to them, and that seems to be the biggest barrier, you know. So that would be my perception of what should and could happen.
Thank you for that, Greg. I'm gonna bring in another question that is more about this session. So this is from Sue Sheehan. I'm trying to understand the role of community food groups going forward. We have had a strong role to play in helping to get food to those needed, understanding the need and finding innovative solutions. What should our long-term strategic goals be in the context of building a sustainable food system? Claudia.
Well, again, I'll go back to this message of trying to encourage meat, dairy and fish reduction because of the environmental urgency, the health benefits, also the animal welfare benefits, which we shouldn't forget, but just to try to embed this less and better meat mantra across all policies, guidelines, ideally laws, so that we see strategies put in place with measurable targets for meat and dairy reduction and increase in purchase of higher welfare products. If all public caterers move to having, for example, one meat-free day a week, it could reduce meat consumption by 9,000 tonnes a year, and that would save 200,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions. So that the impact is absolutely phenomenal and just cannot be ignored. So we'd like to see all barriers to eating more plant-based proteins removed. We'd like to see regulations that embrace alternative proteins without requirements for it to be meat specifically on menus, and for the shift just to be towards a much more plant-based way of eating.
Great, thank you, Claudia. I can see that Kath is about to get her hooter out, so I don't want to spoil my good credentials when it comes to chairing. So I'm going to thank you all very much indeed and hand back to Kath. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And how brilliant to have such wonderful people talking about procurement, which is one of those blooming obvious things that we should just get going and do. And that's such a big opportunity to fix a big chunk of the food system. Hence, it's a really obvious one to talk about when we talk about the food bill, legislation, powers, accountability.